Hello and welcome to the fourth edition of Auto Insider, a podcast from Automobility Limited. I'm Bill Russo, the founder and CEO of Automobility. We're a strategy and investment advisory firm based in Shanghai. And since 2017, we've been helping companies navigate the disruptive shifts, transforming the mobility landscape, spanning electrification, activity, autonomy, and new business models. With China at the epicenter of these changes, we're in a unique position to bring you insights from the front line of innovation. And today we're going to be talking to Michael Wu from Leapmotor. I try to have conversations with the people that I think bring some of the most interesting stories, sometimes the stories that we don't hear often about. And these are the companies that I think are shaping the future of mobility, especially in markets where transformative changes are being scaled at high speed. And that's happening very quickly here in China. Before we dive in, I'd like to remind everyone, if you like this type of content, please hit like and subscribe to the podcast. You'll get notified of future episodes, and it'll help other people discover Auto Insider. So, Michael, you're the co-president of Leapmotor Technology. You're leading the company's international expansion and your strategic partnerships, including the joint venture with Stellantis to help accelerate global growth. And under your watch, Leapmotor has begun assembly outside of China, together with your partner, and you're actively broadening your presence in overseas markets. So before we talk about Leap, though, I'd like to get people to know a little bit more about you. Can you share a little bit about your journey, your career, and what led you to your current role at Leapmotor?
Good morning, Bill. It's great to be here. Yes, I started as a financial services person 25, 30 years ago in Hong Kong. And then I started working in the multiple investment banks in that capacity, helping the Chinese companies and foreign companies to do business, to do transactions, merger acquisitions, fundraising in that capacity. And over the years, I had the benefit to work with the multiple industries companies. Then I joined Leapmotor in late 2020, by introduction of a shareholder of the company. Basically, Leapmotor just got listed in Hong Kong in September 2022, and then was facing different challenges in financing, markets, business models, partnerships, new product rollouts, and things like that. So it was at a very important juncture, and I had the great pleasure to join Leapmotor to work with the rest of the teams in various business development.
Great. I think what Leapmotor, I kind of describe it as one of the best kept secrets. It doesn't get the same attention as some of the more, I'd say, famous companies like Tesla. Obviously, BYD is well known now outside of China, but Leap is a more recent story. But there is a story behind Leap before it entered into becoming what's today I'd call an EV disruptor. Tell us about Leapmotor's journey. Tell us a little bit more about the founders, their background, what's inside of the DNA of the company, and how has it evolved, before we get into the specifics of how you're functioning as a car company. I think people would like to know a little bit more about Leapmotor.
Yeah, our founder, Zhu Jiangming, he's quite of a legendary person, but kept quite a low profile throughout the years. He has been an entrepreneur for 30 years. He was a co-founder and CTO of Dahua Technology. The company makes the security cameras, that kind of products. He successfully built that company through 2 decades to become the second largest world security camera companies. So quite successful, and also got listed in Shenzhen. And then he was an electronic expert in that field. So he was CTO, and he had a very deep technology background in that. And then, after successful venture of that, and the EV business started to take off in China. It was an exciting space, quite venturous, and a good good direction. So that's why he came out to found this Leapmotor and brought with him some teams from Dahua before. That's been 10 years. Leapmotor actually was founded 2015, roughly at the same time as the other new startups in China. However, Leapmotor kept quite a low profile. The reason for that is coming from the electronics field, the team chose to develop major electric systems on its own from ground up, including powertrains, e-motors, battery packs, electronic architecture of the car, and also infotainment and autonomous driving, all of those from ground up. That was a very big effort at the time, but yet the DNA of the founding team did have electronics background, which I believe is quite unique in today's car companies in China. As you can see, there are two broad groups in China. One is the traditional OEMs, traditional car companies switching into EV. And the second group is service internet-based people who start out on this. So Leapmotor is kind of sits in the middle. It had a very deep understanding of the hardware's supply chains from the from the predecessor companies, and also has very strong software capabilities. So this is kind of DNA.
Right. And that's an interesting attribute that I think will describe a little bit more about the landscape of companies that are evolving in the China market in the electrification transition. But as you described, there are companies that have pivoted. In other words, they were making a car before. They're making cars that have electric propulsion systems now. BYD is included in that category. You've got other companies like Chery and SAIC, some of them more private, some of them more government backed. But those were I'd say the legacy companies that are moved over into the EV lane. And then you have companies like Leap that are entering in as pure play startups and having electrification as wired into the DNA. And I think the question that a lot of people have is how do you survive in a market like this that is so competitive, which has so many different types of companies bringing a new value proposition to the market. But one of the features that I want to probe a little bit before we get into the tech is your partnership with Stellantis. You've set up something very unique in the global auto industry right now, a new model, I would call it, for globalization, together with an overseas partner. We've seen a deep collaboration between Leapmotor and Stellantis. Can you share a little bit more about the details of the partnership and the motivation behind it?
Yes, we first met Stellantis team earlier 2023, and then in 10 months time, we formed our partnership. So it was quite a rapid development. Stellantis, I believe at the time, was very impressed with our capability to integrate all these systems in a vertically integrated technology platform. All these key components are in-house developed and our cost advantage as a result. So this was the beginning. And then given this capability, I believe Stellantis felt we had a lot to bring to the table in any partnership. So from that end, we decided to pull the best capabilities from each side and make a viable and prosperous international business for Leapmotor, hence the joint venture. So in the joint venture, we are 51% and 49%, 51 by Stellantis. So basically it's run by Stellantis teams. And on Leapmotor side, we focus on the products, R&D and cost control. And then we basically let the JV company to handle all the markets outside of Greater China. So that's been going on, and that has done pretty well, I'd say, up to this point.
Right. I think as with any partnership, I mean, when you bring parties together that have specific goals as businesses, or as individuals who are working collaboratively, there's always a bit of give and take, right? There's something that we bring, there's something they bring, but there's also some compromises that need to be made. How do you ensure that Leapmotor's strategic vision and DNA remain an integral part of your plans to become a global player in focusing on the overseas markets?
Yeah, Stellantis and Leapmotors are very complementary in capability. We are a startup culture. We have all the technologies in the EV car, so we can come to the market, develop the new models in a very quick way, adopting the latest technologies in infotainment systems, in autonomous driving, all of that. So we do that. That's our strength. And Stellantis Group has great resources worldwide, distributions, logistical centers, and brand recognitions, and existing relationships with the dealers, with the financial services, with corporate customers, with after-sale services worldwide. So we bring this to create a joint venture. It has worked out very well. And also, in addition, Bill, I'd like to say we have structured this relationship in the right structure, economic incentives to make sure both parties are winners, to reduce any potential frictions, potential issues to the minimum.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's no direct conflict in terms of the agendas of each organization stepping on each other's ambitions. Stellantis, having been with a former business that was part of the Stellantis group, Chrysler, I know that the business has evolved overseas to be more of a regional business, so that they're less involved in selling to China as they are participating together with Leap now in leveraging China as a platform for its global business. So your partnership isn't just about your ability to sell through their dealer network overseas. It's also about Stellantis tapping into some of what you were describing earlier, which are the technical capabilities of Leapmotor in helping them become more competitive in their global business. Is that how you are collaborating? It's complementary in that sense.
Okay, Bill, let's step back. Auto business worldwide is a very complicated businesses, touching on different policies, markets, legacy issues. So what we have done here is we want to do what's possible in kind of low-hanging fruits. So what we do initially, what you have described just now, it's all possible down the road. However, we take things in steps, one thing at a time. So initially, what we do is to leverage Stellantis network to sell Leapmotor branded cars. It's our branded cars in the global markets. So this way, it's a clear and simple. We basically let Stellantis take 51% of the pie. So they take 51% of economics and in our car. So this is very simple. We can get it off the ground really quickly. And the dealers are welcoming it. Right? It's a new product, new mix, new things in their dealership, which can get to the market quicker. So that's the first thing we can do. Now, the things beyond that, it's all possible. For example, we could collaborate on joint development models. We can develop some, say, powertrain, battery packs, those kind of things for the Stellantis branded cars worldwide. That's possible. So all of things are possible. And many of those things are under discussion right now. So we could bring some of those to markets, down the road.
So that's kind of the long-term vision, is this could evolve into more of a strategic partnership to the benefit of both companies as global entities, or helping each company become global faster and more capable of competing in a market that has the technology DNA of what Leap is bringing to the party, which is, I think, something that the global auto industry didn't conceive of when they came to China. They thought of China as another market like the others that existed. What's happened over the last, I'd say, decade since Leap was formed, as you said, 10 years ago, is this market's changed and become not just a place to make and sell things, but a place to source inspiration for future product configurations, in particular the smart electric vehicle. And having access to a partner like Leap could be of strategic advantage to a multinational company like Stellantis.
Yes.
But for the near term, as you described, for the near term, you're leveraging a global network that other Chinese companies, as they go global, have to build on their own, right? So you have a partner that helps you accelerate your move into markets like Europe that doesn't require the kind of investments needed to build your own independent capability to do that.
That's right. Yes, Bill, what's happening with the industry, the more protectionism that's coming out of everywhere. So working with the Stellantis brings us tremendous benefits. One of them is to save our management time if we were to do it alone. Imagine that, we're a Chinese company, we're a startup, we're competing fiercely in China markets. We will not have the management, the depth and time to deal with the multiple international markets. So, but yet international markets are good additions. So working with the Stellantis is the perfect way to do it.
They have that experience of helping you navigate overseas that you wouldn't otherwise, you'd have to learn on your own, which would take time and be fraught with, I think, some difficult learnings along the way. I think you can accelerate by leveraging the partnership. And I think that also mitigates some of the geopolitical concerns because the benefits accrue to both the Chinese partner, Leap, and the overseas partner, Stellantis. And that bodes well for getting approvals for entering new markets. Let's talk tech. I mean, you described the origin story of Leapmotor as having been born in another sector. This is pretty common in China, where companies who start out in one industry end up broadening and jumping into a new sector. In this case, bringing the electronics capability, integration capability. And when I visited you in Hangzhou a few weeks ago, you showed me some of the systems level development and importantly, the integration of those systems, whether they're infotainment or embedded electronics in the battery integration, the battery management, the in-cabin experience, all of that involves in today's world integration of core electronics into a computer, right? A car becoming sort of a smart device. So understanding your capabilities, right, and your ambitions to go global and some of the key technology domains, we see China entering a new era beyond just electrification of the powertrain to intelligent driving and connectivity features. We've noticed that Leapmotor, for example, was the first company to integrate the Qualcomm 8650 chip into your solution. What does that mean in practical terms for, say, things like intelligent driving and connectivity? Maybe describe some of how those integration skills are working to your advantage.
Right. As a fully vertically integrated company, we are the tier one suppliers to ourselves in respect of like trains, electronic stuff, lights, infotainment, autonomous driving, all that stuff. So in the case of the Qualcomm 8650, obviously we're the first mass production adopting that chip, which gives Qualcomm a showcase to the rest of the industry in that autonomous driving capability for that chip. Now, what that gives us is that we can master and get the benefits of that chip, integrate that into the rest of our vehicle. For example, now we have Qualcomm 8295, which is mainly for infotainment and cockpit functions by many car companies, including us. And then on the other hand, we bring the 8650 chip, two of them, both from Qualcomm, onto the same PCB board in one box. That gives better communications, efficiencies, and lower power consumption, and also better cost compared to our earlier strategy and earlier solution from Array X. So that, and also what I want to say is, from the decision point to switch into the 8650 chip to SOP, mass production of the models, it took us only 6 months or so to get it done. So in this example, that shows that we're a superior company in technology depth to adopt whatever available in the marketplace, the most appropriate fit technology into our cars. So that ability, Bill, translates into our superior cost control, cost capabilities in the car segment we do, right, which is 100,000 to 200,000 RMB priced cars.
Right. There was some points there that I think bear some emphasis for people who are not close to the way the automotive industry works with its suppliers. Auto industry over time has elected, for reasons, good reasons, to outsource more and more technology. Part of the reason for that is you need experts at specific technology fields to focus on and engineer the best solutions. The difficulty over time as the industry grew was having all of that R&D investment inside of one company becomes burdensome. It requires significant capex, and the industry as being very competitive, requires very low cost in order to maintain competitive pricing. So what's happened is automotive industry OEMs, car makers, outsource and rely on outside experts to do the innovation of new technologies. That's one challenge that the industry has kind of grown accustomed to the dependency of external experts at specific systems development. The problem then is as the technology cycle accelerates, you have to incorporate all of these technologies into a vehicle. And the lag time between the changes made at the vehicle level and the cycle time of the technology development sometimes conflict with each other. What we're seeing in China, and Leapmotor is a great example of this, is having all of that integration of technology and vehicle systems level and vehicle level integration inside of the domain of a specific company. It gives you a tremendous advantage of being able to react quickly to the market, right? As consumer needs change, you can move quickly to deliver an integrated solution, whereas a traditional company, and I would put some of the Chinese companies in that category, BYD, even though they do a very good job of the electric powertrain, they don't do all of the other stuff. Some of the things that I've heard you describe, things like integrated electronics, ADAS architecture coming from those companies, they'll rely on external suppliers. Xiaomi, one of the newer players on the landscape, is a relative newcomer to the automotive industry. They'll also work with outside suppliers. But you also, you have, I think, created an ecosystem where you do a lot of that in-house. So maybe can you describe some of the examples of that? Integrated electronics, ADAS solutions. How is Leapmotor's approach to that differentiated from what is happening in the industry?
Right. This goes back to our DNA and how we started. Our business model, actually, Bill, we develop everything having to do with electronics, powertrains, battery packs, all the softwares, and we also manufacture them as a tier one in our plants. So in this way, we're very similar to Tesla. I think Tesla does exactly like that. Some other companies in China, the BYD is also fully integrated. However, our difference compared to some BYD is that we're all in this. We don't have multiple teams in each of the things. Like, in autonomous driving, currently many car companies talks to and adopts from different solution packages from outside suppliers. In addition, they also have in-house autonomous driving R&D team as well. So you see, you have several horses. You spend the money to run several horses in parallel in the fast developing technology time. I think for them, there's the benefit of that, having different teams, adopting different solutions. But in our case, though, we have one team, one solution package for all of our car models across the board. So that requires very good in-depth capability to work with the hardwares, the mechanical parts, and the softwares, and all of that stuff. So, and also the reason we don't have several horses in running in parallel is that, as I said, our founder, Zhu Jiangming himself was electronic expert, as well as a supply chain expert. So we mastered all of the things ground up. So we're confident enough to do this. Imagine our autonomous driving system is one solution fitting all our models across A, B, C, D platforms. If this is not solid enough, just imagine the impact to our sales and our products. So that gives you a sense of where we sit. We do this to the extremes. We're good at what we do. So that gives us a very different organizational structure, the technology capability compared to other OEM companies, traditional legacy companies, or some other startups.
Well, as I said, as I visited a few weeks ago, you had got the opportunity to drive one of your vehicles, drive in one of your vehicles, and check the self-driving features when we got it out on the road. It was quite impressive, but what impressed me even more was your ability to deliver that type of a solution at the price points that you're able to achieve. So one of the features of Leapmotor that I think differentiates itself is not only the ability to integrate these systems, but to achieve the kind of cost, performance, and speed to market benefits that come from owning the full stack, but there are trade-offs. So the challenge of the industry is how to maintain the full stack advantages while not incurring cost penalties, or the challenge of scaling the technologies becomes yours, right? If you bring that in-house, how do you manage the trade-off of which of these critical technologies to in-house develop versus rely on third parties to bring other experts into the conversation?
Right. This is a critical aspect. Buy versus build on your own. That has a lot to do with our founder, Zhu Jiangming himself. We initially did the self-development only on the electronic related stuff. Mechanical things, no. Steering, safety, braking system, airbags, bodies, windows, and glasses and type. We all use the suppliers. The only electronics related. Looking back for 10 years, it's very surprising for us to notice that we are the most efficient EV company in using money. I'll give you an example. 5 years accumulated R&D costs, about 7.3 billion RMB. 5 years total. And our PPE, plant equipment investment, is probably around the same level. Then to us, it's surprising for us to find in other startup companies, the money are multiples of what we have spent. And then after a little bit comparison, then we realize why could we achieve that kind of efficiency? Number one, because of our founder himself, Zhu Jiangming. He's an excellent leader in R&D. In the process, we made less mistakes. This is what we found out afterwards. We didn't make a lot of fatal mistakes, wasting a lot of money in the process. And number two, we could integrate our different teams in, say, powertrain, battery units, food vehicle, right, autonomous driving, infotainment. All these teams, let them work seamlessly, less mistakes, better coordination as a tier ones in-house. That process was all attributable to Mr. Zhu's expertise as a supply chain expert, as electronic expert. So in a way, he's like a director of a music band. He's a good director. So the pianist, violins, and other instruments can play much more efficiently together. So this gives that benefit. So when people ask us sometimes, hey, you chose to do everything yourself and you didn't have the scale. Isn't that wasteful in money? You would spend tons of money without achieving much. Actually, this is after the fact. In hindsight, we look at back in our journey in the last 10 years, we were quite okay, well-rounded. We didn't make fatal mistakes. Under the leadership of Mr. Zhu, I don't want to mention other companies. If you look at the founders of other companies, I think Mr. Zhu stands out as a very unique person. He not only understands technology himself personally, but also he's a supply chain expert. Just thinking a little bit on that. How many company founders and bosses can be good at those kind of things? Some people are good at marketing, managing the companies, some at the technology, some at supply chain, but not all of them in one person. Now, in addition to that, Bill, Mr. Zhu himself, he's learning all the time. He's breaking out his own knowledge and experience. He's constantly learning on things like, even in our company's sales network, we call it the quasi-direct sales model, basically merging dealerships and direct sale models to bring them together to get the best benefit from that. So he's innovating out of himself all the time. So I'd say, Bill, looking at our technology, our efficiency, we attribute greatly to Mr. Zhu as a founder to lead the rest of the company.
Right. The core of what Leapmotor brings to the table is its experience as an electronics and systems integrator. It brings that into a new domain, the automotive industry, and delivers an integrated solution at ordinarily these technology domains that we're talking about are the high cost domains for technology innovation. But by bringing the DNA of an integrator and by being able to build the full stack solution and rely on in-house capabilities to do that, that gives you a tremendous cost advantage in being able to deliver value, high value at an affordable price point. And I think that's one of the things about China that makes it special in this step into the future of mobility is its ability to engineer full stack hardware, software, electronics solutions in vehicle faster and more affordably than the global auto industry does today, because it has become sort of an integrator of systems that the experts are not in the automotive company, they're in the suppliers.
Yes.
And that's adding cost, and it's adding cycle time, and it's delivering products that, if they have high tech, are very, very expensive. And that kind of gives the Chinese a significant edge as it relates to the future of mobility if it involves critical technologies like batteries and chips and software integration. So let's turn to the market. I'd like to kind of explore that a bit. Okay, you bring the technology, capabilities, and strengths that we've discussed, your ability to deliver that at a competitive price point. And interestingly, and again, I think you guys are one of the best kept secrets, and I've been tracking the sales performance of Chinese companies for quite some time. Leapmotor has maintained a leading position in sales among the Chinese NEV startups, the new energy vehicle startups. From March to July this year, you're number one. And by that, I'm not talking about BYD. I don't consider them a startup. They were a legacy company moving into EV with some unique capabilities, certainly in the electric powertrain domain. So you've been showing consistent growth, and you're gonna, as you described to me, you're break even and turning profitable this year, far ahead of the expectations, I think, of the capital markets. Can you describe what's driving the momentum?
Okay, so besides technology and the efficiency in managing cost, now our key proposition to the consumers is a good product. We sometimes use analogies or comparisons to things like Uniqlo's, IKEA's. Basically, we bring a well-rounded cars to the consumer. Well-rounded meaning it's good in look, good space, good interior decorations, good technology, good infotainment, all of that thing. We're well-rounded. And then the price is extremely good. So we bring the value to the consumers. So that's how we stand out. We're trying to, along the path, as you mentioned, now we sell more cars than some others. Hopefully the impact among the consumer markets are increasing. So people are realizing more and more that Leapmotor is a really good choice. We should always take a look at the Leapmotor cars and see. So that has become our brand positioning in the marketplace. We're not there yet, right? We're still on the way. But as we develop, we hope to continue that path to strengthen the brand recognition as a good value among consumers. That's what we do. Everything we do is surrounding that particular strategy.
You've been able to achieve break even this year, or that's your plan. In order to do that, you built your first car within the last 5 years, right? A relatively recent entrant into the business. Normally, it takes startup companies of quite some time, quite more time, especially in automotive industry, where it's just capital intensive, to see that return to a profitable point. And you've launched multiple models. How have you been able to structure your R&D, your manufacturing, and your cost model to achieve this type of performance while still investing for growth? I think that's the challenge in the startup world, is you don't just have the startup costs, you have to continue to plan for new product introductions, which I'm quite sure you have a pipeline that you continue to invest in. How have you been able to achieve this type of performance in this short a period of time?
Right. Bill, yeah, exactly. 5 years ago, we had our first car models. It was a smaller one, less costly, less risky for a startup company like ours. So we learned in the process how this works. And then in the process, we manage our technology and the cost in a very mindful way. Even today, our founder himself, Zhu Jiangming, talks about parts, which modification can save you $10, $20, $50. So he's still very much on top of that. And then we realized we didn't have a big branding power to begin with. So we have to bring the value and the good products. That's always the core strategy. The product itself has to be good, and the price has to be good. That's the attraction, to attract people to come in. And then if you realize our gross margin has not been high. Our gross margin initially was a negative, very negative, and less negative, and now positive. Even today, our gross margin, we limit as a strategy, our gross margin to 15% level. If you look at some other companies, their gross margin is 20% or even more. Some other companies, they couldn't achieve much of the margin because the cost structure is not there. So in our case, we very carefully manage our technology, cost control, making less mistakes, well-rounded products to the consumers, and keep the margin at a relatively reasonable level, right? Not to say we try to milk the product already. We're not there yet. So all of this stuff, we work together, one step ahead.
Yeah, and it's really maintaining a laser-like focus on the value proposition that you're offering, which is great technology at an affordable price point. You're building a brand image as a technology company that can democratize a smart electric vehicle. And that works in China. The question I would ask as you think of becoming, with your partner Stellantis, a global brand, initially I'd say European consumers as viewing Chinese brands, they are probably not as familiar. Um, they may have a perception of the brand being a certain way, but their awareness of that brand, the products may, from the standpoint of the overseas markets, they are, I think, amazed at what is coming from China in terms of product, but the brand recognition tends to be low. How do you plan as you go outside? I mean, it's challenge in China to build a brand and getting people to recognize it, which I think you're clearly demonstrating you've been able to do, given the numbers and of sales that you've been able to generate. But how do you build Leapmotor into a recognized international?
Right. Bill, internationally, this again takes a process. It takes time for consumers to see your cars and word of mouth, all that stuff. So that's why working with the Stellantis, we got a good start in terms of a channel map out, after sale services, which is super important, as you know. Some of other companies lag on the after sale services. So we have that good starting. Again, the product has to be good, and then it will take the time for the consumers to buy it, use it, a word of mouth, and then to gradually grow on. So we don't have a wishful thinking that by doing something, we're going to achieve a big blast kind of a market entry in international markets. So we understand it will take time. You will, work with the dealers, right, to make sure the dealers are also good, that they win, they're well supported. When customers buy it, we give us services. So in addition to that, in this year and next year, we chose a strategy not to make too much profit from overseas. Rather, we would redeploy any profit back into the markets to make sure there are more cars on the street. And when consumers drive it, they're happy with it. So that there's a process. So that's why in 2025, we target to sell about 50 to 60,000 cars overseas, which is a good start for a company like us. And for 26, we hope to keep working on it and double that volume overseas. So then we go from there step by step.
Have you made any adaptations to the way you're communicating with the overseas markets versus the way you approach the Chinese market?
The communication is slightly different. Working with the Stellantis group, we don't have a lot of monetary resources to do marketing, promotion, advertising, that stuff. Although we're doing it, but the main way is to get the cars out, get out on the streets. That's the key thing. And I want to share with you, Bill, our cars are using the dealers under the Stellantis group, right? The conversion rate is higher than their branded cars. I heard, in some cases, out of the 10 people who look and try our cars, probably 3 or 4 of them will place an order. So that's already very good. So the products are good.
So the product perception in the value proposition is translating well in the early innings of the game. Beyond selling vehicles, Leap, as you described, coming from its supply chain origin in electronics, core systems, e-motors, battery pack integration, all of that work that you're doing in-house. You have ambitions perhaps to not just be a car maker, but also a supplier of technology. Is that your long-term vision, is to position yourself in sort of that role in the value chain?
Yes, that's a possible outcome in our business model. Although currently, Bill, as you can understand, we're under fierce competition in China. So all of our energy and resources are being put in the car models, sales to compete in the China market. And also in the meantime, supporting Stellantis in the overseas market. So that's a focus and where our resources is being deployed. However, since our capability as a tier one, so we selectively at the same time, while resources allowable to discuss with some OEM companies as customers, things like our powertrain e-motor systems. We're talking to multiple OEM companies, some in China, some overseas, including Stellantis Group. So once that materialized, we could, at some point, maybe in about a year or 2 years' time, start to deliver in volume of those components to these potential OEM customers. So that's something clearly visible and doable, although today that's not our focus in terms of resources allocation.
The focus is build it yourself, show that you can build a brand with those capabilities integrated into your solution. Obviously, the benefit of the partnership is you can then expand that to include the Stellantis universe and their platforms, where they can leverage your supply chain partnership. We're starting to see a little bit of that with a few companies working with Chinese partners. Probably not enough. There need to be more of those types of global partnerships in order to kind of leverage the scale of what we see happening here, particularly around the smart EV. So let's talk about the roadmap. You're looking ahead now. Priorities for new model development, investment, geographical expansion. How are you thinking about really realizing the full potential of what Leapmotor has built so far?
I'd say overall we're on track in what we do. So domestically, internationally. So again, we need to be focused and disciplined on the things we want to do. So by end of 2026, we will have rolled out all our ABCD series platform cars. So today we have a C series and B. We launched 3 models in B series this year, and the C has already done. 26th, we'll launch A series cars and D series cars. So we'll have between 13 to 14 models by that time. So that'll be the full scale of entire product portfolio, tailored to from like below 100,000 price to up to 300,000, D class MPVs. Again, across these platforms, it's under the same brand, same value proposition, bring the best products, most well-rounded products, and with affordable price to strike that to the consumers. That philosophy is across all the platforms.
So the core here, obviously, electronics origin, that's your technology DNA, your ability to integrate the more complex electronic systems, build them into vehicles. Do that. You said 100,000 for people who are not from China. 100,000 is about 13 or so thousand US dollars, right? So target the affordability. Affordability generates volume and scale, and leverage that scale as you move up, as you climb the ladder to these other segments which have higher pricing potential. So you're building out a broader range of products and gradually increasing the average selling price of the units that you're selling. Sounds like that's kind of the way you're going to expand and become this profitable company. And it sounds like you've done it in an amazingly short time window.
Yes, exactly. That's our strategy.
So 5 years from now, if I were to kind of come back, let's get in a time machine, come back 5 years from now, 2030, what are we going to see? Where do you see Leapmotor, both in China and on the global landscape?
Right. We see ourselves in 3 or 4 years' time. Firstly, in 2026, we'll cross the sales volume of 1 million cars for next year. And from there, we'll build quickly to get to 1.5 to 2 million cars. And eventually, at 2030, we hope to get to the 4 million car units. Then we'll be a real scalable mainstream car company globally. So that is the path that we're on. Again, how do we get there? It's the exact same thing, Bill, we have discussed, to laser focus on what kind of value we bring to the consumers, leveraging our cost, technology capabilities to grow the company, not only in sales volume, but also to gradually improve the earnings. We want to make profit and grow that profit along the way. So there's a balance.
I hear this is a consistent theme I hear is don't chase short-term profitability, chase long-term sustainability of the business. And that's rooted in having core capabilities that are scalable first. It is a race to scale. And the future mobility, which depends on batteries, core electronics, and software integration skills, full stack software integration skills. you want to make sure you master those supply chain domains in order to be able to sustain your business and profitability going forward. Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yes, that's a perfectly description of our strategy.
And China is changing the way we think about it, right? The global EV and software defined vehicle landscape. How would you describe that? Because again, most of my time I try to help people understand why China is different and special. Maybe in your own words, how is China shaping the global EV, not just EV, but the things that people see? I mean, you don't see the electric motor, you don't see the batteries, but you do see the experience when you sit inside the car and have a different type of an experience of being transported. How is China shaping the way we think about the industry?
The China market, as we observe, Bill, the reason that is cutthroat competitive is that consumers tend not to have a lot of loyalties. So consumers are very unforgiving, right? If you good products, they'll buy you. If 1 year later you're not as competitive, people will walk away from you. So there's enough of these competitive forces, products that come to market all the time. So that forces the companies like ourselves, we have to keep thinking how to make the products always new features to follow the consumer trend. You know, the young people in China are very different people. They're very different consumer types. So we have to constantly adapt. So because of this, the technology and cost and efficiency have to come with it. Otherwise, we'll be very soon left behind, right? We cannot rely on the cut price alone. Cutting price alone will not work. It's not going to work. You know, some people ask me, hey, what about next year? This couple bigger players will cut price. My response is beyond certain point. If you keep cutting price, you would probably will invite consumers to draw a conclusion that your car is no good. There's always a limit as to what you do. If you cut more and people say, oh, the reason they're cutting more is that the cars are no good to begin with. That's why they're cutting so aggressively. That would come back to bite and hunt your image and sales volume. So it's not like you can only rely on the price cut. It has to be a balanced approach. So this competitive nature in the China market, in a way, trains us, right? Trains us to behave in certain ways. It's fast evolving. So that's why I find some of the traditional OEM companies having a hard time to adapt because they're too big, they're too successful in the past, their organizational structure is already there, right? It's hard to make a change.
If you were to take the kernels of what you've just described, what would you say if you had the opportunity to speak to the boards of or to the leaders of multinational global OEMs and suppliers on how to position themselves in a world where China has now become a center for innovation?
Well, I mean, every company has its own history and conditions, operation and histories and legacies. For the major OEMs, they have a tremendous advantage of brand recognition, the scale, and the market, footprint all over the place. That's a huge advantage. Now, what I see them is that they have so many constraint factors, right? On one hand, they're being demanded a profit from capital markets. You cannot always incur losses indefinitely. In our case, we have no such constraint. We're all in. We can make losses for years until a day, right? We can turn. So we're different. What we call the organizational or governance structure. And then second thing, I see the global bigger companies that they have a lot of talents, organizations. It's just a speed of change. It's something that they have to deal with compared to the Chinese companies like ourselves. So I think we will come from different backgrounds, each having some advantages and weaknesses. It's just how we can work focused and disciplined to try to extend our strength to the extreme.
Great. You've now worked with a startup, and you brought it or helped bring the team into the global spotlight. Your role as a spokesperson for the company and speaking to an international audience, working with the JV. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in taking a startup into the global spotlight?
The lesson or the things we see is that we have to know our own capability boundary. what we are good at, what we're not good at. So in making a decision, in our case, working with the Stellantis group, is that we assessed. At the time, we had a debate internally. People were asking, why do you want to outsource the entire international markets to a partnership? What if the partnership doesn't work out, right? That's a valid consideration. But if you look at the other side, what the risk of not doing well overseas by ourselves and by working with Stellantis, which risk is higher? Given our startup nature, all of our people are in China. We have no knowledge whatsoever about international markets. If we do it alone, we'll take time, could make mistakes, and could waste money, could have cultural frictions with the different markets we could encounter. All that stuff will add to the cost. So in a way, I guess we have to know ourselves, know what's there. So to do the most ideal business strategy, decision making to fit our situation.
Know where your limits are and know where to go to get the help. And I think if companies looking to the future of mobility struggle and fail, look for where there are opportunities to collaborate to get you out of the ditch. Whatever you're stuck in, there's ways to get unstuck, right? But do that quickly. Don't let it fester to the point where the gap is too big. And I think that's where a lot of the struggle is right now for a lot of companies as this market goes toward the future. If you were to kind of summarize in a word what you think of the future of mobility, what would it be?
There will be countless opportunities evolving out of the current technology advancement. The reason we're spending so much time to compete in EV is that there are similar technology supply chains that could extend beyond EV car as a device. It could expand that to other devices. And also the other devices will draw on the same supply chain. So I think that's what's at stake. That's why people are competing fiercely in this. The opportunities are unlimited. Sky is open in a way. You heard about this robots, right? There's other potential low-flying vehicles or this all kind of things.
Yeah, I think the word you said, and I kind of pull that out from the car as a device. It's a smart device. It's a computer, and it's going to be the place where we're going to integrate electronics and accelerate toward a increasingly automated, robotic, AI-infused world. This has become a platform for integrating very high-tech solutions. I think that's something that the auto industry, thinking of itself in the 20th century context of being a manufacturing industry, needs to reform its thinking toward becoming a high-tech industry, making a sophisticated, integrated, software-defined solution on wheels.
Yes.
So thank you, Mike. This is a great exchange, and I think will be very interesting for our audience. This brings us to the end of this edition of Auto Insider. A big thank you to Michael for sharing his experience and valuable insights into Leapmotor's global expansion and the evolving landscape of the smart EV global collaborations, and particularly the shining example of a Chinese partner working collaboratively with a global company, Stellantis in this case, to build toward the future. We hope you enjoyed this conversation and gained a deeper understanding of the forces shaping the future of mobility. Please do not forget to like and subscribe to the podcast and get notified of future episodes and to help others discover Auto Insider. Until next time, I'm Bill Russo, and thanks for listening.